The wind softly glides across the grass of the plains as you peacefully graze about alongside your fellow hoofed comrades. Life is simple. Your only worries are filling up on the foliage of the fields that you roam, avoiding the occasional mountain lion or pack of wolves who steal the sick and weak and young from the herd, and definitely staying just out of reach of those awful hairless apes who rush in on their horses with their stick throwers and boomsticks. You think, why do they take so many of us? The wolves, the pumas, they take what they need, but the apes, they slaughter us by the hundreds in a barbaric bloodlust riddled with greed and malevolent desire. It's just then that you hear a hard smack as a member of the herd cries out in pain, a loud crack off in the distance as you look toward the direction of the sound. You see an ape sitting atop his speed clambering about, until flash, smack, boom, another member of the herd cries out. You can't help but wonder, how are they reaching us? Is there no distance at which their destruction can be avoided? Is there no limit to their hunger for our kind? You wonder what their goal is, or just what they're thinking as they take everything from the land. Turns out all they're really thinking is, well, dadgum, this fancy new 50-90 Sharp sure does reach them even from here. Howdy do, folks, and welcome back to Chambered in History, where we're going over the story of cartridges that made history themselves. From back-of-the-drawer relics to big-bore bruisers, we're cracking open the brass cases and spilling out the history. Subscribe! Today, we're going over the true Grim Reapers of the American Bison. And while, yes, we did already go over the 50-70, which was one of the Grim Reapers, we've also made it around to the 50-90, and like I said in my last video, the 50-90 alone, specifically just the 50-90, doesn't have that much information on it, kind of. You'll see what I mean in a second. So here we are going over the main Sharps Big 50s that destroyed our bovine friends of the Great Plains. Meaning today we will be covering the 50-90, the 5100, and the 5110, which are different cartridges because they have different names, but they're also the same cartridge. Really, they use the same case and bullet. They just use different powder charges. So, I think they're technically the same thing. If you have a rifle chambered in any of them, they will shoot all of them. A 50-90 will shoot a 5110. Sharps. 5110 Sharps. Don't try anything else. As well as touching a little bit on the Sharps 5140 or the Sharps 50 by 3 1/4, which there's really not that much information about because it was actually made after Sharps had already dissolved as a company, and the company that made it never actually chambered it for any rifles or produced any rifles chambered for this round, Winchester. So yeah, I just figured I'd throw it in here because it's kind of part of the 50 blah 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 Sharps family, so I figured I'd throw it in here. Now, there's a story that gets tossed around quite a bit about a Union Army unit led by Hiram Berdan. They were known for their skill and proficiency with their Sharps rifles, and eventually people started calling them the Sharps shooters, and then later just sharpshooters. And a lot of people seem to think that this is where the term sharpshooter came from, and as cool as it would be, it's just not true. The term sharpshooter actually came from 1700s Germanic Europe, because come to find out, Germans to this day have never used the word sniper to describe or as a designation for their precision shooters, and have always used the word Scharfenschützen, which translates directly to sharpshooter in English. So the more you know. See, the American bison was not only larger than their African cousin, the Cape buffalo. We're talking like American bison female is about 930 pounds, Cape buffalo female 700 pounds, American bison male 1600 pounds, Cape buffalo male 1,000 pounds. So it's got a little bit on. That's average for both of them. But they also weren't nearly as pugnacious or devious as the Cape buffalo. Hence the nickname of the Cape buffalo, Black Death. I think that gets the point across. So the American bison was a lot harder to get close to. But not only that, we also don't have nearly as much brush as they do in Africa. So it's a little more difficult. There's a lot more fields where we're at. So that's kind of why. So this is why you don't really see anybody taking down American bison back then with double-barrel rifles like they used quite successfully in Africa, because they just weren't accurate enough. They could get much closer to their prey than we could. They had the thicket. They had the awful animal that they were going after that was just mean. I know I'm blaming the animal here, but still. So we couldn't get close enough to use a double-barrel rifle. We needed something accurate. It started with the 50-70 government, an already hard-hitting, half-inch wide slug-slinging pill of destruction in the eyes of the buffalo community. However, Sharps wanted to make something more. They wanted to make something faster, something that made laying out herds of bison from even further away just that much more possible. Now, unfortunately, we were still working with black powder, and black powder still has its limitations. It's very inefficient. It requires a lot of mass to really get a lot out of it, and yeah, I mean, that's about it. So what did they have to do to increase the powder charge? Well, they had to stretch the case, and that's exactly what they did. They stretched out the case to fit more powder in it to make more power. Because back then, we didn't really have the same ballistic and scientific research and knowledge that we have nowadays. So we didn't have jacketed bullets, we didn't have ballistic tips, we didn't have soft lead, we didn't have, or soft tipped, we didn't have hollow points. So the only way you can make a bullet hit harder and do more destruction is to just make it bigger, make it heavier, and make it keep up with all the lighter ones. Now, Sharps initially started with a plain old 50-70 and put a 2-inch long case on it as compared to, I think, the 1 3/4 case of the 50-70 government, but that basically went nowhere, fell on its face, and pretty much nobody has ever heard of it. I mean, I didn't know about it until starting this research. But then in 1872, they seemingly struck gold with their 2.5-inch case version, the 50-90 Sharps. Now, same concept as the 50-70 as far as the name goes. It's a 50 caliber bullet with 90 grains of black powder. However, there's a good reason that this round is often just called the 5100, because Sharps would almost always put 100 grains of black powder in their cartridges instead of the name advertised 90. Now, just 3 years after the Sharps Rifle Company dissolved in 1881, Winchester came out with a new Sharps cartridge, the 5140 Sharps, or the 50 by 3 1/4 Sharps. However, they never actually got around, like I mentioned before, to actually chambering it in a rifle or producing a rifle that was chambered in 5140, which kind of sucks because it would have been a heck of a hard hitter and a cool round, although admittedly probably a bit overkill for anything you're running into in the 1880s, but it would still be cool to have today. All right, now let's get nerdy for a second like we always do. So the bullet itself of the 50-90 is a .512-inch projectile, diameter-wise, and the case is a 2.5-inch rimmed, straight-walled, drawn brass case with a neck diameter of .528, a base diameter of .585, and a rim diameter of .663, and an overall length of 3.2 inches. Then we had the 5140 on the other hand, which was running the same size bullet diameter, .512 inches, except a 3.25-inch rimmed, straight-walled, drawn brass case with a neck diameter of .529 inches, a base diameter of .551 inches, and a rim diameter of .652 inches, with an overall length of 3.95 inches. So that is a giant bullet, massive bullet, huge. Can't stress that enough. 3.95 inch, that's almost 4 inches. That's massive. So it's pretty close to the 50-90, all except for the length. Now, the 50-90 was offered in several different configurations, and just a few of them are the 335 grain option, pushing a screaming 1,475 feet per second, and a decent 1,630 foot-pounds of energy. Then you had the 473 grain version, pushing a decent 1,350 feet per second, but a quite impressive 1,920 foot-pounds of energy. Then we had the massive 550 grain version, which was pushing a humble 1,275 feet per second, but an earth-shattering 1,985 foot-pounds of energy. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a little bit higher, but whatever. I'm sorry, I know the lighting looks weird. This is a different day than the day I recorded because I realized I completely left out anything to do with the 5110 ballistics. Now, unfortunately, I really couldn't find all that much about it because there's not that much information about 5110 ballistics, at least back then. Pretty much all I could find was that with a 285 grain bullet and the 110 grains of black powder, they could get it up to like 1,600 feet per second, which is impressive because I read another article that claimed that 1,500 feet per second was about the limit for black powder then, so that's pretty impressive. But again, I really couldn't find all that much. Now, I could find plenty about modern day loads with smokeless powder, which were freaking screaming. I mean, there's people getting them at like 2,200 feet per second, and that's impressive. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I added this in there to at least acknowledge the 5110 in some way in the ballistics area. Developed by Christian Sharps based off of some of his earlier models and produced in 1871, the 1874 Sharps was produced in quite a few different configurations, including the long-range and Creedmoor variants, which were typically optimized for long-range shooting with 32 plus inch barrels and advanced peep sights or even telescopic sights. And then we had the carbines such as the cavalry carbine, the sporter carbine, and the business rifle. That's what they called it, I have no idea. Which sported shorter barrels, more practical for close range combat and everyday carrying. Now, a feature that I find pretty cool that came in almost all Sharps rifles, specifically all the 1874s, is the dual trigger system. So it worked just like a double action revolver in that, like when you pull back the hammer, it sets the trigger and it's a lot lighter and a lot shorter travel. Same concept. You set the first trigger. I don't remember which one. You set that first trigger and it sets the second trigger, or you pull the first trigger, it sets the second trigger, and that second trigger has much less travel and much lighter trigger pull. The feature aided in long-range precision shooting when accuracy was the most crucial for the shooter. Now, Sharps rifles also came with both round and octagonal barrels, which were mostly aesthetic choices. However, the octagonal barrels were a little bit heavier and a little stiffer if that's what you wanted. Now we're going to get into some celebrity uses of the 50-90, starting with Billy Dixon. The 1867 Treaty of Medicine Lodge reserved most of the Texas Panhandle as hunting land for the natives. However, not unlike many other white buffalo hunters, Billy Dixon and his group of 28 other buffalo hunters ignored this treaty and went up there hunting anyway, and subsequently were attacked by 700 to 1,200 Native Americans at the Adobe Walls trading post led by Kawana Parker, consisting of Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne warriors, marking the Second Battle of Adobe Walls. The Plains Indians were following the advice of a powerful medicine man named White Eagle, who claimed to have the power to raise the dead. He promised them a swift, easy victory with no casualties, and that the white man's bullets would never reach them or would fall to the ground, or they'd stop them in the guns, all that. However, the battle obviously wasn't quite as swift and easy and casualty-less as the White Eagle had promised, and turned into a 3-day siege, which on the third day, they retreated to go meet on top of a bluff about the war, or about the battle, because they were mad with the White Eagle with the lives that they already lost, about 13, which was supposed to be casualty-less. That's probably not a word, but I'm still using it. They asked him stuff like, why is your medicine not working? What's happening? And he defended himself and his prophecy, although admitting that the buffalo hunter's magic was more powerful, but he remained stern that they would defeat the buffalo hunters without a doubt. Unfortunately, that's when Billy Dixon noticed the Indians sitting atop the bluff and used a borrowed-on-the-fly 50-90, because he didn't think it was 45-90, I think was what he had, would quite reach them, to make his legendary 1,538-yard shot on one of the Native Americans sitting on top of their horse, scaring away the Indians as they realized just how much reach the buffalo hunters had now, earning him the title of having made one of the longest sniper shots in history, especially at the time. And although Billy later admitted that it was really just a lucky shot and he was just aiming for the group and not necessarily the one that he actually hit, it was still dubbed the shot of the century. Kamar Arms even made a commemorative special edition rifle to honor Billy's shot, calling it the 1874 Billy's Sharps. Now, the funny part of all this is that this whole event earned the White Eagle quite a bit of bad press among the other natives, who promptly renamed him Isatai. I think I did pretty good on that one, which translates to coyote vagina, which apparently is a very common Comanche warrior insult. So I thought that was pretty funny. I was laughing my butt off when I was reading about it because it was so funny. Another account of someone famously using an 1874 Sharps rifle championed in 50-90 was the buffalo hunter turned lawman Bill Tilghman. Born in 1854 as the third of 6 siblings, Bill took a job as a buffalo hunter in 1871, where he supposedly took out 7,500 buffalo just by himself, which is insane. That's a lot of freaking buffalo for one person. I don't even know if there's a person in the world right now that shot that many deer. I mean, that's just insane. However, in 1872, Bill left his hunting camp to go hunting, and upon returning, found that it had been burned and stolen from by a Cheyenne raiding party. And while most people would consider themselves lucky to not have been there when they got there, Bill was pissed. Bill wanted revenge. So what did Bill do? Well, he resupplied his camp, set everything back up, and took a covered spot in a concealed area and waited. Sure enough, the raiding party returned, and when they did, Bill turned his 1874 Sharps rifle on them, killing 4 of the 7 and scaring off the remaining 3. Now, Bill would eventually go on to open a saloon in Dodge City known as Crystal Palace Saloon. Now, Bill did his best to mind his own business, but Dodge City isn't exactly known for its low crime rate, so there was quite a bit of run-ins he had with people. Even though his establishment was doing fairly well for him and his business partner, an old Buffalo hunter friend of Bill's, Bat Masterson, wanted Bill to sell out and join a different line of work. Specifically, that line of work being to become a deputy sheriff for Ford County, Kansas. Eventually, Bill relented and sold his saloon to, in fact, become deputy sheriff of Ford County, Kansas, cleaning up the streets of Dodge City alongside the likes of Bat Masterson, his brother Ed, Wyatt Earp, and Ned Brown. Now, I'm sure a couple of those names definitely ring a bell for some of you Western flick lovers. Specifically for me, Wyatt Earp. I mean, Kurt Russell, Tombstone. Oh my God. Great movie. Now, Bill was known to be an extremely skilled shot when he had to be, but usually preferred to avoid gunfights, which is pretty cool of him. Eventually, he was elected to Marshal of Dodge City, where he stayed for 2 years before eventually leaving to go grow his ranch. It's actually a 1999 film starring Sam Elliott as Bill Tilghman. I think it's the last few weeks of his life or something. I haven't seen it, and I don't know, I just haven't seen it. So if any of you have, let me know if it's worth watching, if I should really take a look at it, or, you know, or what. Or if any of you go watch it because of me mentioning it, let me know. Speaking of movies, now we're going to get into some famous instances of Sharps rifles and Sharps cartridges being used in media and pop culture. In the 1994 film Legends of the Fall, Paul Desmond's character Decker uses an 1874 long-range Sharps rifle chambered in 50-90 to shoot out the policeman's tire, or a policeman's tire, to get him to get out of the vehicle, and then shoots a second time, wounding the policeman, and then finally shoots a third time, killing the lawman on the spot. From quite a distance, if I might add. There was also one used in the 1971 film Valdez is Coming by Burt Lancaster's character Bob Valdez to make a very impressive almost 1,000-yard shot with deadly effect. Now, the movie never explicitly says that he's using a 50-90, however, a lot of people speculate that he was, as well as the fact that in the book it actually does say he's using a 50-90, but you know how books and movies can differ, so just go with whatever one is actually a 50-90 to make me right. Thank you. And though not a 50-90 at all, the 1990 film Quigley Down Under, starring Burt Reynolds, sparked quite a bit of New Age excitement, almost probably the most New Age excitement over the Sharps rifle series, where his character Matthew Quigley makes quite a few impressive shots using his 1874 Sharps rifle chambered in .45-110, specifically one on a bucket at 782 yards, which it is very impressive. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I really want to rewatch it, but every time I ask my girlfriend, she says, hell no, so I'll get around to it eventually. As well as the 1966 Clint Eastwood film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where Clint's character, Blondie, shoots a hangman's rope from an extreme distance. Some say a little too extreme, but it's a movie. And while no, this one wasn't chambered in 50-90, rather 45-70, it was still a very iconic movie that gave the Sharps rifle a spotlight for a little bit. And as for the last movie on my list, I have Django Unchained, which stars Jamie Foxx as Django himself, as well as Christopher Waltz as Dr. King Schultz. In this movie, Dr. King Schultz sports an 1874 Sharps rifle that he uses to make a very impressive shot on a man with a bounty on his head running away on his horse, as well as Django's impressive shot on another man with a bounty on his head plowing fields with his son, which was kind of sad. But hey, maybe don't have a $7,000 bounty on your head, especially when $7,000 at the time could buy you like a whole farm, maybe. Think about it. Now, unfortunately, this movie is set in 1858, and the Sharps 1874 wasn't produced until 1871, meaning this rifle is either a time traveler or Dr. King Schultz is a time traveler who went and got an 1871 rifle. Which sucks because, you know, kind of messes with your immersion and everything, but it's still a cool rifle, so I don't care. I still love to see it. And while the cartridge is mostly obsolete these days and rounds are not being mass manufactured at all, you can still purchase them from custom shops like Reed's Ammo or make your own from home. And while yes, it can be kind of pricey ordering from custom shops, it might bring you a little bit of peace of mind if you're not entirely confident with your ability to hand load. I mean, you're hand loading a 50 cal. If you don't think you can do it, don't do it. You don't need to blow yourself up. Just saying. Spend a little extra money. It's whatever. Now, I personally have a kind of a hard time spending $70 on a box of 20 rounds, but it's not my money, it's yours, and I'm not going to tell you how to spend it. Now, the rifles, on the other hand, are 100% expensive. I don't care who you ask. While they're definitely worth it, $1,500 to $6,000 is a lot of money to spend on a rifle. A lot. I know some of you folks out there are rich. I know you 65 and older folks, because I know that there's a lot of y'all in here. I know y'all got the money for that. But we don't in this generation. I can't afford nothing. So I don't want to see any looks when you see me out in the street with a cardboard sign that reads, "Will work for sharps," because I'll do it. I'll do it. I want a sharp so bad I could taste it. But in all seriousness, if you're a collector or a black powder big game hunter or a black powder shooting competitor or even an enthusiast of historical reenactments, companies like Shiloh Sharps, Uberti USA, C Sharps Arms, and Kamaran Firearms make some of the highest quality Sharps rifles that you can get in the modern day. Because unfortunately, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the original manufacturer, Sharps Rifle Company, dissolved in 1881. So if you can afford one and you want one, get it, because I can only imagine they're going to keep going up in price, especially with the way everything is going these days. So you're not going to regret it, and it'll be one of the most memorable purchases of your life as a gun enthusiast. While yes, a lot of these rifles are generally chambered in 45-70 by default, specifically Uberti USA and Kamaran. Those two are specifically chambered in 45-70. But you can still get a Sharp chambered in 50-90 or several other calibers from the higher end manufacturers that I mentioned, because the ones that I just mentioned are kind of on the lower scale of Sharp's reproduction cost. I mean, it's still like $1,500, but they're on the lower scale comparatively, because some of the Shiloh, I think, get to like $6,000. But heck, you could get one in 22 long rifle and I'll still be green with envy. Nowadays, these Sharp rifles and cartridges are held as some of the most iconic weapons in history due to the stories told about them, the movies they were in, and just how freaking awesome they are. I want one so bad. So whether you're a fan of old Buffalo rifles, historical firearms in general, or maybe you just love the movie Quigley Down Under when you were young, you know when you see these rifles that you want one. And while yes, it can be difficult to get your hands on a Sharps rifle, if you ever do, it'll be one of the most prized possessions you ever own, one of the most cool rifles in your collection, and you will not regret it, I promise. Because you'll know that you own a true piece of American history, even if it's not actually one from all the way back then, but at least you can shoot it, right? Plus, you will definitely feel the difference in your wallet after you buy it, because that part's always pretty hard to shake, at least for me. I mean, heck, that thing was $1,100 for just the rifle, and then like $50 or $80 for the bipod, and then $550 for the scope. I got a lot into that rifle, and I finally wanted a long range thing to use. It's a toy YouTube, but I finally wanted something long range that I could go play with, and that is what I have. I don't mean to use the word play. I know people, oh, you shouldn't play with fire. I know I don't play with firearms, but I wanted to do some long range shooting, so I bought that setup, and I really like it. It's a Bergara. I'm not going to tell you the caliber because I don't want to hear your crap, but yeah, I'm hoping my girlfriend will shoot it one day, but she is still being a wimp. So if you enjoyed this dive into the core Sharps Big 50s and the rifles that were slinging them, please comment, like, subscribe. Tell me about the Sharps rifle if you have one. If you tell me that your grandpa gave you 5 of them, I'm going to cry. Please send me one, for the love of God. And next week, like I promised, we are talking about the 45-70. I know you people have been waiting on it. It's coming. It's here. I'm ready. You better be ready. It's going to be fun. Just be ready, all right? I'm scared. You people, if I get a single thing wrong, you people are going to light me up, and I do not want that happening. It's so embarrassing. So just be ready. I'm gonna be working hard, trying to get it cranked out as good as I can. Make everything right, include everything that I think needs to be included, and I'm very excited for it, and I hope you guys are too. So thank you for making it this far and finding out what the next episode is. So until then, keep your powder dry, your brass polished, and always stay chambered in history. We'll catch y'all next time. Thank you. Please subscribe to my channel.